Welcome to Judaism Demystified, a podcast for the perplexed. Join us as we explore some of the most fascinating Jewish and Torah-related topics with our esteemed guests. By tackling some of the biggest questions you likely won't find addressed elsewhere, we aim to shed light on important issues and inspire a return to the fundamentals. Enjoy the show. Thank you for joining the Judaism Demystified podcast. We are honored to have Hakham Mordehai Yemini return to the podcast. This is, I believe, your third episode, but a long-awaited return. You're probably one of the most, in the top three most requested guests to return. So we're so happy to have you on, and we're happy to see that you're safe and well during this time. So welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I really like being here. Every time I'm here, I have a lot of fun. We have a good conversation. You guys and me go back a while. We've been ideologically through a few things together, and I also watch your show. Whenever you have a new show, like I'm there. If it's as soon as it's on, I watch it, and I find the diversity of people and ideas that you bring onto your show really fascinating. Like I'm not capable of that level of diversity myself, you know. But
that means a lot.
really nice.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I guess it's appropriate you're wearing your uniform right now to ask you about, because you have obviously a very unique perspective about the idea of this war being a just war, Milhemet Mitzvah, and also just your overall view of the Dati Leumi kind of approach to war and so on. So if you can just take it away.
So, yeah, a couple of things. I'll, of course, start off by saying I, like most Israeli citizens, am doing Miluim. I'm fortunate enough to do Miluim on the farm that I live in. So my army service is right near my house, and my son does Miluim with me on the farm I live in. And I get to be his mefaked, so he finally listens to me after being my son for 23 years. So I can punish him and make him stay home for Shabbat, and then he stays home with me, stay on base for Shabbat, meaning, and base is home. So I'm very lucky. I'm in a lucky place. Also, I became a grandfather 2 weeks ago.
Oh, Mazal
Tov.
Amazing.
That adds additional perspective. Once you're a grandfather, you see things. Of course, you can't stop talking about it, and then you see things from a bit more detached perspective sometimes. So, regarding Milhemet Mitzvah. I'll start off by saying that the concept of Milhemet Mitzvah in halakhah, it's spelled out very explicitly by Rambam and the Mishneh Torah. It's one of two things. It's either three things maybe: kibush haaretz, conquest of the land, or mechiyat Amalek, destroying Amalek, or Ezrat Yisrael, miyat tzar sheva alehem, to help Israel, the nation, defend itself from those who try to destroy it. Those are the three separate categories. Some people might argue that today we're in all three categories.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
It's conquest of the land. It's Ezrat Yisrael. It's also, in a way, at least symbolically, mechiyat Amalek. But I believe that we're definitely in Ezrat Yisrael miyat tzar sheba alehem. The Torah has these rules where you bring sanctity in day-to-day activities. Conflict and war is unfortunately at times in history a day-to-day activity. Hopefully soon it won't be a day-to-day activity. Hopefully we're reaching a stage where war will be superfluous, where people won't be doing it anymore because people will realize how dumb it is. But until that day comes, war is a necessary part of life, and when it's done in self-defense, then there's rules and regulations, and it's a mitzvah to do so. Right? So I believe we're in Milhemet Mitzvah, and one of the things that moves me from the Haredi world to the Dati Leumi world. Now I'm on the fringe of the Dati Leumi world because of my Maimonidean views. But what moved me from the Haredi world to here was this refusal of the Haredi world to recognize that self-defense, collective self-defense, is an obligation. This goes beyond the Zionist, non-Zionist argument. But the fact that we're collectively being attacked, and you understand, these are people that have an idea of a collective self, and have in-group solidarity. They'll pray for their fellow Jews. They'll ask. They'll read their newspapers. The most Haredi newspaper Satmar newspaper in New York, the Yid, I don't know if it's still around. When I was there, it was a Yiddish newspaper. It was 80% of it was news about Israel. These people care about Israel, right? But the idea that we, the nation of Israel, has the right and the obligation to defend ourselves it's kind of either they don't accept that or they have excuses for it. And that's one of the things that got me out of that world, right? And I've been since my teens. I believe that this is really important, and Zionism and the uniform. And at times, I've really gotten like this uniform in the past to me was magic. I looked at it, it's like this is the greatest thing you can do. I'd be like in Milhemet and I'm doing guard duty. I'm high, thinking of David HaMelech and Yehuda Maccabi. Meanwhile, terrorists can sneak right in because I'm like fantasizing about LARPing as this ancient Jewish warrior. And it took a while for me to get a more reasonable perspective, on these things, and maybe a truer perspective based on our values as Jews, as Rambamists, right, as Mekorists, as we like to call it now, right? And I won't say I've changed my views, but I've adapted it, and it's as such. I've noticed a few things, and I'd like to share this with you guys.
Please do.
So, you notice, like, when you read the Tanakh, right? And you go through the military history of the Jewish people. There's a lot of military history that, if you look at it from a purely military perspective, it's actually significant. It's important. Parts of the Tanakh can be read lahavdil ben atameh v'atahor, like Sun Tzu, or like some other books, famous books of strategy of Clausewitz. Right? There's these rules of conflict, how to deal with your enemy, how to keep morale high among your own troops. How to you have to sometimes. Like King David's very famous for giving up his own personal safety and his personal interests for the interests of the group, and therefore losing tribally but winning nationally. You have a lot of principles in Tanakh that are strategic and tactical. But one thing unique about the Tanakh that's different from all other ancient literature is they completely demythologize the warrior, like the warrior myth is completely destroyed in Tanakh. If you look at the way anywhere in Tanakh they describe battles, they describe it as, there was a battle and, 5,000 died on this side and 1,000 died on that side, and it was a terrible day or it was an okay day, and then it goes on. And you compare this to ancient Near East literature, how they describe battles. It's almost erotic how they describe the warrior's muscles and the metal, the weapons, and how he felt and how the enemy was. Right? This hero worship, this military, this self-aggrandizement, or getting lost in the myth of conflict is very easy because war does bring out a lot in you, brings out the best and sometimes the worst in people. And it's very easy to kind of lose yourself in this world of fantasy. Right? And there's people, and there's also a need for it, I guess, because you need to sell young people that war is great, otherwise they won't show up for army duty and do a good job. So I guess it's adaptive that people have this form of avodah zarah where they mythologize a necessary activity, but not necessarily a sacred one. I used to believe that this thing that I'm doing holds within its sacredness. And in a sense it does because it's a mitzvah. But the truth is that the Tanakh doesn't see it that way. The Tanakh will depict its greatest warriors as being weak ethically, morally, and just also weak as people. You'll see the greatest hero, mythologized hero, like Shimshon, right? Hagibor. He is this, his name, it's in the name, Shimshon Hagibor. He's this great character of extreme strength, very mythological warrior. This is like the archetype of that. And then Shimshon himself, he's being manipulated very easily by a woman, right? So his weakness is being portrayed there as well. King David, the warrior king who we love so much, and David and we think King David's going to be he basically the legacy of King David lives forever. With that same King David, the Torah doesn't spare us any of the untowards details of his life. Again, showing that the warrior king isn't a be all and end all. And you have a great Rasha like Ahav, who's an idolater and a Rasha and a murderer, and is like all the worst things in the world. He's depicted as a really brave warrior. Like today, we kind of look at bravery and warcraft as an intrinsic essential value. We call our enemies cowards and we call ourselves brave, as if bravery and cowardice is an ethical value. Now, it's an important value. Rambam talks about it as well in Milhamot. One should believe in God and be brave and be willing to die for the cause. But the fact that one is brave in war doesn't necessarily make him a good person. Here in Eretz Israel, if you're a general in the military, you automatically can be a Knesset member, and you get the government wants you because you had a military career. We still live in that magic world, and I don't live there anymore. We do our job, we do it with joy, we do it as ethically as one can within the circumstances of our lives, which could be seen as unfortunate in some ways, but we do not. We should refrain from mythologizing. I'll be in a restaurant with my kids. People, oh, Chayal, thank you so much. They pay for my meal. It's all very nice. But part of it is this mythologizing the martial aspect of our lives is not a healthy thing for a nation to have. We should be more calm about it, more chill, and we should follow the Torah way of recognizing that this is a necessary evil that we're engaged in. We should do it professionally, and we should be as deadly as we can in war, but we shouldn't turn that into our entire personality. And it's a hard pill for many of us uniform guys to swallow, but it's something that I believe we should take into account.
Fascinating. Anything you want to... Yeah,
very clear.
I'm curious to know, because you engage a lot with people who disagree with you, obviously, on your YouTube channel, which you should plug as well, if you can. It's Guerrilla Judaism, or is that there's another name now?
It's still called Guerrilla Judaism, but I switched. I 8 months ago, I decided to experiment and try doing my whole Maimonidean jihad. I decided to do it in Hebrew. And it's doing really well. It's doing actually better than my past English channel. So now I'm doing it in Hebrew. It's called, if you want to look it up, it's called Atkumamut Rambamistim, the uprising of the Rambamists, something like that.
Yeah, I want to get to that topic soon.
Yeah.
But I've watched a lot of your videos, and you've also debated anti-Zionists in the past. It was one of them was moderated by Joseph Cohen.
Yes, a long time ago. Yeah,
that was a long time ago. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know your experience living in Israel. Do you feel that since the war, there's more and more openness in the Haredi world to, let's say, serving or respecting the idea, or is it? Yeah.
No, I'm saying, do you think that that's something that will eventually ever come to pass?
So I think there's two questions. One question is, do I see any change in the Haredi world? And the question is, do I think that their aversion to being part of this country and part of this society is ever going to pass? The answer to the first is yes, I see changes. In fact, I do Miluim training to keep up because I'm old, so to keep combat fitness. A lot of it is with Haredim who are just now joining the military, guys my age and younger, who something switched in them. Now, is it a majority? No, but it's a growing movement of independent-minded Haredim who still live in the Haredi world, whether it's Jerusalem, Bnei Brak, Beitar, and whatnot. But they realize that they need to be part of what's going on here, and they feel like the burden of defense is theirs as well. So that I see that as a trend that's happening. But these are people who, at least mentally, they're on the fringe of the Haredi world. They happen to have been born Haredi, they look Haredi, they send their kids to Haredi schools, but all things being equal, it seems to me that these are people that maybe wouldn't have chosen the Haredi lifestyle to begin with, right? There's also small groups of what they call modern Haredim that are coming up from the Haredi world, and it's kind of ambiguous what exactly they are because they don't have one leader. It's kind of decentralized. But these are Haredim who you'll see working in high tech, dressing nicely, driving nice cars. These guys tend to go to the army as well, right? And again, it's not as ideologically intense as us Dati Leumi people, but in a way, I kind of respect that because these are not they don't mythologize the war as much as we do. But us, it's Milhemet Mitzvah, or the fantasy of being this ancient Jewish warrior completely consumes you. They don't have that. But do I think that there's going to be a change in Haredism? I don't know, because being Haredi means something. It has a certain integral definition. And I think that essentially what it means is to not be part of Israeli society at large. You have to be different because they are degenerate, not religious, not God-fearing, and we are religious God-fearing, and we carry the torch of tradition. So, but we, I mean the Haredi, that's how they see themselves, and they see the army as a threat to that. There's nothing the army can do. Like we have today, Hashmonaim unit, which is I've been to Hashmonaim base for various things, training and so on, because I kind of live like Haredi in many ways. I like having tzniut and Shabbat and kashrut and so on. I just give you an anecdote. I was there and they had like the way it works is it's under the Qafih brigade. Okay, the Mahat of the Qafih brigade. He's not a religious guy, but he's in charge of this new Haredi unit. So Krav Maga instructors showed up to the base to do like a couple of days of Krav Maga training. I just happened to have been there. And the guy who's like doing guard duty outside the base, he's a chassid, Rachmas Trifk or something. He's in full gear with his payas. And the Krav Maga guy, he's not letting the Krav Maga guys in. Why isn't he letting them in? Because the guy had like earrings and tattoos like on his neck. He was this like big guy full of tattoos. And the Haredi guy was like, this is a Haredi base. You can't come looking like a behemah. You're not coming here. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? I'm a Krav Maga. I've been doing this for 15, 20 years. You can't tell me how to dress. I'm not telling you how to dress. This is a Haredi base. You're not going. It goes all the way up to the Machat. The Machat's listening to this. He says, the Machat's like the brigade or commander. He goes, this is a Haredi unit. These are their values. Let them do what they want. Why you come like that? Send them someone else. Like, I don't have patience for this. No women and no tattooed neck guys, right? Because he kind of lets them run their base, at least religiously, as they want. This is the first time in the history of Tzahal that they've had that. I found it entertaining to watch and inspiring to see. But I don't think that it's going to have a really like big effect on Haredim at large, because them doing that means they're going to work. It means they're going to become part of the Israeli society. And just like there's a military-industrial complex, which the Torah is against, I don't know the Torah is against the military-industrial complex. It's a bit of a tangent. This is a chidush that I had many years ago. You'll notice that in the Tanakh, we discuss the wars, there's no cavalry ever. We face cavalry, but we never have cavalry. Shlomo HaMelech has horses, but you never see like a cavalry charge anywhere in Tanakh. It was always light infantry. And I was like saying, why? So, we have the commandment not to have horses like the Egyptians, and the Egyptians are big on cavalry, but it kind of bothers you because that was like a tank of the ancient world. Why would the Torah limit a tool that could be useful? And the answer is that I think that when you have a cavalry, then if any of you have ever ridden horses, it takes a long time for the horse and the human to gain each other's respect and trust. Yeah. And what ends up happening is, in order to have a cavalry force, they have to be full-time. It can't be a reserve unit. You can't show up from Elohim and just take a horse from the stable and run it. That horse has to know you really well. You have to be a professional soldier that knows nothing else. And the biblical values were not to have a professional army. We wanted a people's army that has something invested, so we don't create wars. That creates a military-industrial complex. If you have a cavalry charge, in order for them to justify their resources, their funding, they need to keep on creating conflict. Right, so we don't want to have that kind of thing. So Lahavdil, like the Haredim have a political industrial complex where they need to create people that will vote for Haredi parties, that will go to Haredi institutions, that will bring funds to Haredi to the Haredi institutions, right? And that's consciously and subconsciously drives them to make decisions. See, all their decisions go in that direction, or to upkeep that complex, because there's a lot of they basically make money off funding, government funding, and that they get for their institutions. It's all based on that. Once people start going to the army at 18, they don't go to these yeshivot gvul. They learn on their own. They get married. They go to college. They go to university. Several things happen. First of all, they may not vote for Haredi parties because in order to keep them loyal voters, they need to be in the system forever. And also, they don't go to kollels. Now, why would they need them to go to kollels? So ideologically, kollel is good because God loves when people don't do anything with their lives and just learn ancient texts without any practical application. But secondly, besides for that, kollel is good because when you have millions of people in kollel, hundreds of thousands of people in kollel, then the funding that you get for the kollel, be it a lot or be it a little, goes through these institutions and strengthens them. And therefore, they're never going to approve publicly their own people going to the army. What's going to happen is you're going to have fringe Haredim joining the army, but the main body of like Haredi political leadership and unfortunately rabbinic leadership, which I see as corrupt, is never going to be behind it. They're always going to reject and resist these kind of things.
On the topic of leadership, now that you brought it up, who is the Gadol Hador today for the Haredi world?
I haven't been keeping up really. I'm really, I've been busy with other things. I haven't been keeping up who they've crowned as the latest Gadol Hador, but it's usually a dispute between different factions in Panovich maybe, and like in Jerusalem. I don't know.
But that's
I don't
sort
even
of
know
my
who the
point.
line is.
No. But the reason I asked that, it was
They don't know
semi-rhetorical.
either.
Because it was semi-rhetorical. Because what I'm trying to say is actually it was never ever there was never really a situation where someone would not know who the Gadol Hador was. You had Chaim Kanievsky, and you had this type of it was always there was always an overarching figure, and it just seems like today there isn't any.
That's remarkable that you mentioned. I didn't think of that.
That's what
but
I was
you're
trying to
right.
get
Yeah.
at. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, like in the past, you knew it was Rav Shach, you knew it was Rav Kanievsky, you knew
Yeah,
Rav Steinerman. All those people are not with us, and now it's like, and now you get this like, it's more decentralized. There's the Rosh Hashiva here, Rosh Hashiva there. Yeah, it's different. Also, they have like a YouTube channel, the Gedolei Hador, whoever they are. I don't know their names, but I'm actually watch their channel, and they'll show like clips of them in Yiddish or Hebrew, telling people not to go to the army and so on. So, but I guess once they're constantly on YouTube, then it loses. They get demythologized too. You know.
Yeah, because their followers shouldn't be on YouTube anyway.
Yeah,
but
but I think that like as a group, they have a what's called a survival instinct, and their survival instinct drives them to continue doing what they're doing. Because if they loosen up their grip on people's mind and they allow people to kind of go out into the world and exist as Jews in Eretz Yisrael who are part of what's going on, they lose political power, financial power. So their ideology is always going to follow that interest. You know?
Well, I'm curious to know about one thing you mentioned. You said like they see the guy with the tattoo who comes in, these Haredi people in the army,
Yeah.
and they see them as degenerates and secular and all that. But what do they do with someone like you? Because they obviously, I feel like they would take you seriously to a degree, right?
They do, but so it depends. Like from my experience, so we're opening up a whole new subject, but basically they look at the Dati Leumi. Historically, they've seen people who are the Dati Leumi or look like the Dati Leumi or non-Haredi forms of Judaism as inherently inferior. So if they'll see a guy with a beard serving in the military, he's serving in the military, so he's not as God-fearing as we are, obviously, because he's not Haredi. Yeah, he's a Rosh Hashiva, and he's the Talmid Chacham. He's not as much of a Talmid Chacham, as the great Rosh Hashiva from my place who never went to the army. So they have that mental understanding always. Sometimes you can earn begrudging respect from them if you engage with them on their level in some sugya. They'll say, "Oh, I met this guy in uniform, and like every sugya, he knows it better than us." They could respect you for that, but it would be. You would need to work much harder than a regular Haredi guy to earn that respect. That's been my experience. Also, that being said, once they're in the army, you have a few of them that look at it and say, you know what, the Dati Leumi guys were right all along, right? There's people who dress like Haredi, who look like Haredim, but inside they're bigger Zionists and even jingoistic, subtler type Zionists. They can be like extremely right-wing like Zionists, but they're dressed like Hasidim because that's where they're from. So you're going to have that as well. I've never been mistreated by them on a personal level. In fact, I could walk in Mea Shearim and people will stop me on the street and say, "Oh, I see your channel. It's
Really?
Rambam Mystery. I enjoy it. I disagree." Like I've been disrespected in the comments, but in person, I've always been treated nicely. Even in the army, people recognize me. I don't know why. I have 1,500 subs, right? Subscribers. And in Mea Shearim, people recognize. Like people, just like a week ago, a guy stops me. Yeshiva guy from Torah. I don't know if I should be doxing him, but I don't think his Rosh Hashiva is watching. He's like, this guy, Rambam, this guy from Rambam Mitzvah. I said, yeah, I am. He said, every Shabbat I go home, I take my mom's non-kosher phone and watch your show until my mom needs her phone back. Like, could you please upload it to Spotify or some other thing that gets through the kosher phone thing?
Yeah.
And he told me like some of my friends listen to it, like we're aware of your work and we enjoy it, like they engage with it. In fact, I started doing like these because of my channel, and I get a lot of people calling me, and a lot of people sending me emails and asking me questions. I started doing every month like a Rambam Shabbaton at my farm, and I invite anyone who wants to come. And people between 20 to 30 people show up. We eat together, we pray together, we have our own minyan, and 30% of them are people who learn Haredi yeshivot, or Haredim,
Interesting.
right? Who see themselves as Rambamists, but they're just in yeshiva and they're figuring out what their next step is. This I just started a few months ago. So it's like my fourth Shabbat.
That is so interesting.
When you say they
So
see
one
themselves,
third of my listenership who define themselves as Rambamists come from the Haredi world.
okay, so what do you mean? Define Rambamist for the viewer who's listening for the first time, doesn't have a background of who you are. What do you mean? What are they discovering about themselves that they realize, oh, I'm like this? What is it?
So what I promote in my channel, the Hebrew one, similar to what I used to promote in my English channel, is what I consider to be classic Sephardic, and not even Sephardic, just classic Judaism values, the way Rambam expressed them, and it's been suppressed. And it goes along two main fulcrum points, two main points I focus on. One is the correct definition of monotheism as being an idea that rejects superstition and hero worship and mythologizing human beings. So we don't believe in intermediaries between us and God. We reject Kabbalah, Hasidus. We see the proliferation of groups like Breslov as a step backwards in the story of the Jewish people. It's like kind of spitting in the face of the prophets that tried to get us to believe in one God, and now we believe in intermediaries. But instead of being like Christians, we have intermediaries that kind of follow Shulchan Aruch. But it's like you can only get to God through these intermediaries. I think that's something that I express it in a very radical way, but I express it in a very coherent way. And there's a lot of people that hear that, and they can be actual wrestlers. And this has happened to me. I like the idea of of meditation. I like the idea of like not being depressed. I like the idea of like looking at things from a creative perspective. And I was always bothered by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov saying that I'm the way and the path and the only way to God. I was always bothered by the hero worship, and that's not what I connected to in Breslov. And they start engaging with me, and they start bargaining. There's like the 5 stages of grief. Maybe Rabbi Nachman meant this, maybe he meant that, but eventually they wake up to the true faith that this idea is idolatrous, even though I've come around to admitting from engaging with these people that there are profound things in Nachman's theology that could draw people in. It's not just the idolatry that brings people, right? He does have some profound ideas. And it's basically a dance between the ridiculous and the sublime, between Or v'Choshech, and then they also kind of come to that conclusion. So I have guys like that. Sorry, I got into a tangent. You asked me a question. Well, what do we mean by Maimonidean, right?
Yes.
Rambam. So one is a complete rejection of superstition and a complete rejection of any relationship to God that goes through an intermediary. If there's an relationship with God, it has to be direct, no intermediaries. It's challenging, it's hard, because on the one hand, we believe in a transcendent God that's outside of nature, and yet we want to have a relationship with him, but that relationship cannot be with an intermediary. The challenge of bridging that gap, that's all of Judaism, that's all of the Torah. If you bridge that gap through a human being, through an ideology, through Knesset Yisrael, anything that's not purely the worship of this apophatic God that's defined negatively, as Rambam says, to us is idolatry. That's one point. You was asking.
Before you go to the second, it's not a question, but I think for some viewers, I don't think everybody realizes. Look, superstition. I don't think that people realize that in essence, what superstition is creating an intermediary. It's creating that's really what it is. It's creating like
that's why we hate it. Not because it's dumb, but because it creates that intermediary. It's not just that it creates an intermediary. We think that the ancient idolaters, sorry for taking over your comment, they believe that we can manipulate the gods through making the right chants, the right sacrifice, the right incense, and it was all recipes to control the divine, right? That was what they believed. Abraham is destroying these idols and saying God is outside nature, and the relationship with him is both deeply personal and also deeply philosophical, and there's no way to manipulate God. He's not in the realm of manipulation. religious superstition is the opposite of that. And when they take the Torah, right, and they say when you're praying, you're not actually communicating with God, but you're uniting the male, the feminine, and masculine aspects of the Godhead into one through your tefillin, through your praying. This enrages us, Rambamists, because it's if it enrages me more than Jews for Jesus. At least the Jew for Jesus, he chose another religion. He has his Messiah. We know that he's not one of us. But L'Shem Yichud is in my Siddur that I grew up with, right? Stay tuned for the Siddur that we're putting out now. We're putting out a Rambamist Siddur that would be useful for everyday people, but we'll get that in a minute. But like that enrages us to no end because it's taking over our religion, which is designed to reject these things, and it turns it into another pagan idea, and that's why we fight. That's like the real war, more than Iranians and Hamas and whoever thinks they can destroy us can. But this can destroy who we are. It's extremely important to us. That's one point. And the other thing that makes us what we call, I'm using the word Rambamist. It's not the most elegant term because, we'll get to that. But the other point is halakhah. We want halakhah to be as Chazal envisioned, as Rambam expressed it, something coherent, something consistent, something easy for a regular person can know what the law is. An example of this is, if you read the Mishnah Berurah, I believe, years ago when I remember reading the introduction, the Chafetz Chaim himself, who was a genius, was a Dohador, right? Until today, he's like a mythical figure in the religious world, not just in the Haredi world, right? In the Dati Leumi world, he's also, right? And I don't take that away from him. He has all my respect for his hard work and for his contribution. That being said, he starts off his book saying the following thing. I, Chafetz Chaim, don't know if I've kept one Shabbat properly. Because there's so many details about Shabbat. Like, maybe I did Borer by mistake. Maybe I did that. Now, if you live in a world where the law that you follow is so complex, it's so difficult to follow, and you who have like a PhD in halakhah, and you spend your whole life doing just that and nothing else, are scared that you didn't have one Shabbat, you're violating the idea of lo b'shamayim. That's not coherent. That's not intuitive. That's a legal system that's just designed to break a man and turn us into these neurotic people who just
OCD.
can't function.
OCD Judaism. Chumrot to cover every single base possible.
Exactly, and we see the Jewish world kind of like scrambling between that and open Orthodox, which is the same principle. It's basically there's no firm legal principles of the law, so you can kind of open up and rediscuss and re-legislate everything, and you basically have an amorphous law that goes somewhere between lev tahor, covering young girls' faces by finding some source that might indicate that that's the law, to another person saying, oh, women can be in minyan and olel Torah, and gays can get married because of some other source, or like, yain nesach is not a thing anymore because Christians aren't actually idolaters, if Chabadism are, so you can, basically the law, but it's not even about, people think it's like, oh, you're more Mekel, you're more Machmir. I'm not Mekel, I'm not Machmir. What's more important to us is coherence and intuitiveness. We want the law to be intuitive and coherent, where a regular guy who got went to like a community college, right? Got an MA in business management, can know what he can eat, when he can be with his wife, how to observe the holidays, and be relaxed. Not constantly be stressed out, and not need to call in a rabbi every time you eat dinner, like on a regular basis, right? Or how to perform every holiday or every religious obligation. That's basically what I mean. I've changed the term. We've changed the term from being Rambamist to Mekorist. We use the word Mekorist now. I stole it from a friend of mine, but I hope he forgives me. But I think it's a better term because it's a little broader. It doesn't mean you have to rule exactly like the Mishneh Torah everywhere, but it does mean that you have to accept the Mekorot, the main sources of monotheism, and a coherent law. Those are the things. That's basically what we want. Within that umbrella, we can accept everyone.
So you say that this Haredim who come to you and they spend these Shabbats with you,
very interesting.
They have concluded in their own world, in a way, they reject superstition, they reject intermediaries,
and they don't like the confusion that they're seeing in the halakhic frameworks that they're learning. And so,
exactly.
Yeah, and so when this is presented, it's like they're able to connect it intuitively. They're like, oh, Like,
It taps into something that they believe in on some level, right?
yeah,
If I met someone like, I try to be that guy that when I was their age, when I was 18, I was in a Haredi yeshiva too. I was in Bir yeshiva. And I remember my experience. I remember looking at some of the phenomena that was going on in the Jewish world. And I didn't have the words to say that it was idolatrous. I was like, ew, this isn't looking right. And it bothered me, but like, there's a great tzaddikim. You can't say anything because everyone's a tzaddik and everyone has a right to his opinion, right? I remember going to Miron and on Lag BaOmer, I didn't know what I felt. I was 18. There was a party and, it was barbecue, people were dancing, but like something about seeing people wildly dance around the fire and appeal to their saint. Something about that didn't make sense, but I was an 18-year-old kid. I didn't have the words to describe what it was. I'm giving these people a voice, and then it connects to them, and they say, yeah, this. A lot of them are like Litvaks. They go to Lithuanian yeshivas, who anyway, they don't like Hasidus for these reasons, but they don't go all the way with the idea behind it. And some of it would be Sephardic, and many are actually Hasidic, as in people who joined Breslov and Chabad for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. I've realized that they've joined Breslov because Breslov and Chabad are aggressively marketing Judaism. We're not aggressively marketing it. They end up there, but then they listen to my channel and they say, yeah, this is the Judaism we want. We never liked the idea of Lidrosh al Hamitim, to send the deceased rabbi letters, consider him communicating with us from the other world, right? Like, that seemed off to us. Doesn't seem biblical and doesn't seem rabbinic. Like, where does that come from, right? But yet they were in Chabad because Chabad did the right thing by creating we call it ma'atefet, creating and enveloping them with like love and with Torah of the type that they promote. So a lot of these guys, they see what I teach and they connect to it. And we're talking about guys who are like young 18-year-olds who are learning in yeshiva and 50-year-olds who have kids that are married that are learning in yeshiva, and they're like changing their mindset. They're still living in their Haredi bubble. I'm not even like, I reached a stage that I don't even see myself as Dati Leumi anymore, because the Dati Leumi are just as guilty of, I say this with love, it's not personal, but they're just as guilty of allowing the pagans to overtake their communities as the Haredi. The only thing that the Dati Leumi are better is that they wear the uniform and they serve, and even that, it would be nice if they gave some thought to demythologizing it and not worshiping military stuff too much either. But I find myself like kind of on the fringe of that world. So when I speak to Haredim, they don't feel like I'm trying to get them to be Dati Leumi. And the argument I make is that I'm a Mekorist. I'm following the ancient sources, and what you guys are doing is not a true expression of the ancient values that you purport to believe in.
Very, very interesting.
very.
One of the things that I've noticed, like an uptick of, is that there's all these accounts popping up. Whether we agree on all their ideas or points is irrelevant, but the fact that there's an interest. There's this Rav Chen Shaulov, who's this rabbi in Israel who has, he goes on these anti-Kabbalah tirades, and then you have a Professor Shalom Tzaddik who you had a conversation with, debate with, bringing kind of the Maimonidean approach or some version of it to the forefront. Then you have these accounts like Cantoni, and you have these. There's an interest. Let's just put it. There's the Chabura.
There's a renaissance happening.
It's a renaissance.
It seems like our time has come.
Yeah, it's a renaissance. There's the Chabura. There's Judaism Demystified. There's a flavor for everybody.
You guys are pioneers. You've been doing it for a long time.
I don't know if we're the pioneers, but I appreciate that. But the fact is, there's an interest, and we've been talking about it multiple times in the podcast. When we go into like a Sfarim store, we'll see like the books 10 years ago in the front were always like, by the window, we're always like autobiographies or biographies of about a rabbi. But now it's like all like Tanakh and Rambam. It's like you have Magid putting out
publishing,
Faur.
Even Art School put out like a Rambam anthology, right? Of like all the Hagdamot.
It's actually pretty good, by the way. The Art School. I personally enjoy it. I have it and I enjoy it. The person behind it, we actually interviewed him in Judaism Demystified. The editor, he's really good.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's very nice. In fact, even like I saw like some Haredi rabbi put out work on the Geonim. I think that we're basically experiencing the beginnings of a much needed, much deserved renaissance of this form of Judaism, right? I think we're there, and it's time to enjoy it.
I think that part of what's going on is, I'm speaking maybe a little bit, not biasly, but from maybe my own experience, but I really think that this is something that probably goes on with everybody, is that we're all born in a context, in a certain misgeret of thought that, from our families and our yeshivas, and I think naturally the questions are always there. Like you said, like, a person will be Chabad, but he'll see the Dor Shel Metim, the letter thing, and he won't say anything, but it gets put into the back of your head and kind of stored there. You know what I mean? And then you go on, right? And then there's like even superstitions, there people be like, is this really the right thing to do? Or learning halakhah, and then, you go through all the poskim, and you're like, is this really? But we put it in the back of our head, we lock it up, we keep it into our subconscious, and we move on, because there's really nothing. That's what there's nothing else telling you otherwise.
There's no alternative. Yeah.
There's no alternative, right? But we keep it locked, right? So when people show the courage to come out and to actually present something that speaks to those things, which I think many more people than we would realize, even the ones that vocally are against, I can almost promise you, even the ones that are outright vocally against, there are things in the back of their head that they're not.
I'll tell you this, even more than what you're saying. I don't know if I should say this, but I get like really excited about my work, and I ask to meet certain famous rabbis, like Kiruv rabbis, who we all know and love or hate, okay? And I've had meetings with these people. They know exactly who I am. And several times, not always, several times I've heard people who are famous Kiruv rabbis who quote, like in the Haredi world, they're like, if I told you where, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All of you would know exactly what I'm talking about. People who are way more popular than myself. They tell me, we agree with what you're saying almost 100%, almost everything you say. But we're already like in this. The best we can do is like, we're never going to join you. And I'm like, oh, you have to. It's like the wars of God, Milhamot Hashem, like this, you got to do this. This is the real Milhemet Mitzvah. It's more important than anything else. Monotheism. They say, they say, calm down, take it easy. We're not going to do that. We're not going to fight you. But we agree with what you're saying. Well, the best I can get out of them is that they're going to stress superstition less and focus more on classics and on Gufei Torah, and find ways to be inspiring from the classical sources, not to go for the cheap, like a comedian that will go for cheap laughs, not to go for cheap spirituality. And I've been watching their channel, and they do that, and I'm on like WhatsApp with them. They veer off it, I'd call them and say, oh, we discussed this, and like, oh, I just used this, or it was like, I needed this point, and so on. So, and I'm talking about like famous Kiruv people. From time to time, I've had like a certain Rosh Yeshiva from like a big yeshiva call me because some of the students were going off the derech and he wanted to see what it's all about. And he came to my farm and we had a one-on-one conversation for a few hours. He told me, I agree with you. We can't, there's certain things we can say, certain things we can't say. So I believe that the walls around Jericho are beginning to crumble. And, there's going to come a time where your whole channel and my whole channel, people will watch it, like people in the future maybe are watching it now for them, where maybe I'm not alive anymore. It wouldn't even be a big chidush. They'd be saying, oh, this is what the Gedolim always believed in. Like it would be like the Shabbetai Tzvi. People today don't understand that Shabbetai Tzvi was like 90% or more of Orthodoxy. People won't accept that all of Orthodoxy believed in this nonsense. They're all going to be like, pure monotheists, and this is going to become normal. Right? It's a matter of time. I'm hoping that we're at the beginning of that evolution.
Sorry for the interruption, everybody, but a few months ago we were recording with Hakham Mordehai Yemini, and we got interrupted. Unfortunately, there was a siren, and he had to go to a bomb shelter, and we weren't able to schedule another podcast till now. So we're happy to have the Rav back on, and please just let everybody know what you've been up to since the time we last spoke, because I know there's a lot going on in your life.
I don't know. I just spent 6 months in a bomb shelter. How long was it? 3 months?
3 months.
3 months. There's been 3 months in a bomb shelter. Look at the world. It's nice out. It's hot. It was winter back then. So so we were rudely interrupted last time. We're discussing various interesting things, but it's cool to continue the interview. But a lot has moved. A lot has changed. A lot has evolved. Okay, it's changed for the good since we spoke last time. Where shall we start? First of all, us, for lack of a better term, Maimonideans, Rambamists, we've never had an institution before. We had places that were more friendly to us. We had places where we would be criticized or attacked or persecuted less, but we never have had a place where we can be truly ourselves, and that's changing because Rav Yochai Magbili, who we all know. Did you guys ever interview Rav
We
Magbili?
did.
Did, yeah.
I didn't. How come I didn't see it?
You did. You even went with, you had a back and forth with me about something that we had inside the podcast.
Yeah.
about-
Oh yes. I remember now.
You
Right.
remember,
So,
okay.
getting old. I'm a grandfather now. I can forget things.
Mazal
So, thank you. So, Rav Magbili opened up a yeshiva, which is a unique, one-of-a-kind institution, which is a place, so far, is the closest we've come to having an institution where we can truly be ourselves. And I visited the place, and a lot of my students who are younger, who are post-high school or in high school, I've recommended that they spend at least a year over there before the army, and they're doing that right now. So that's great news. And in addition to that, the kind of informal education that I've been doing. So I remember last time I was telling you guys that besides for the channel that I have in Hebrew called Shivrei Luchot, which used to be Guerrilla Judaism, but I've relaunched it as Shivrei Luchot because I live in Israel, and I saw at the time there was a lot of content in English, but there was nothing at all in Hebrew. There was no information in Hebrew at all. So I decided to launch this channel, and it really grew enormously. And I realized that there's a thirst for this kind of content and information, and people felt isolated, and people thought they were crazy, and no one else had these ideas. And through the channel, I realized that we're actually community. And being that I live on a farm in the middle of nowhere and I have a lot of space, I started doing Shabbatonim for Mekoristim. We rebranded to Mekoristim because we want a bit of a wider tent, and the word Rambamist comes off a little bit culty. We're not a cult, so we do these Shabbat Mekoristim. And my first Shabbat about 8 months ago when I started had 12 guys. The last Shabbat a month ago was 55, and my next Shabbat this weekend I have 80 people that want to come, but I only have room for 60.
Wow.
So that's grown, and in these Shabbatot, each time we have classes and we have lectures, we've been guest speakers on different subjects, Tosefta, Geonim, Yerushalmi. We study different lesser known Chachamim, like we did a whole Shabbat Rabbi Eliyahu del Medigo and his book Bechinat Hadat. And this Shabbat we want to do Rabbeinu Avraham ben Rambam and talk about meditation and prayer and other such arcane subjects. And and people in the beginning it was like 10 yeshiva kids who were interested. Now you have families and children, and we have a women's class, and there's all sorts of side activities on these Shabbat. It's becoming an institution, an informal institution. And then they go back home, and then the community in the past, if we were an online community of rabble rousers, now we're actual people who have a yeshiva somewhere, and we meet once a month, and we have our own nosachat tefillah. So that's grown exponentially, and I feel very blessed to do that. And that's what's happened since then. And then I started teaching classes in various parts of Israel that are pretty well attended by people that see my channel. And then other people are doing similar things now. And I'm kind of stretching the Overton window of what's acceptable to talk about and what isn't. And in general, I'm sure you guys see in Israel, I don't know, I don't want to take credit for it, but there seems to be a rise in interest in this subject. So even if you watch classic rabbis like Rav Aviner, you'll see titles of like Rav Aviner addresses the who wrote the Zohar controversy, or you'll see some Sephardic rabbi who's always a Shas guy who always mentioned the Zohar and mentions Kabbalah. He mentions it less, and you'll hear him quote Rambam much more. So the people that come to my Shabbatot, they're a very interesting group of people. You have people who are Baal Tshuvas, right? Baalei Teshuvah who were never observant, and this is the first time they keep Shabbat. And they don't even describe themselves as Orthodox. They're like, no, anachnu lo datim, anachnu mekoristim. 17-year-old, 18-year-old high school kid who goes to Chiloni high school, he wears tefillin every day. He doesn't want to. He realizes that we're different mindset. And then we have Haredim who go back to their yeshivot, elite Haredi yeshivot, and these Haredim, when they go back to yeshiva, they're closet Rambamists. So this has happened to me that I've been in Geula, and people recognize me in Mea Shearim Geula, and they'll say, "Oh, Mordechai v'Shevei Luchot, yesh lanu she'ela," and they'll call me into the yeshiva, and they'll have a discussion with me in Talmud. They're having like an argument in like Rambam, and they hope I can help them, or they just want to have that conversation. And I hear crazy things like, we have a telephone kasher, which is a internet phone. Like they'll steal their mom's phone on Friday, and because it's only on YouTube, and I still couldn't figure out how to move from YouTube to one of these kosher audio files, which I need to get around to. So they like binge on their mom's YouTube for like a few hours, and then go back to yeshiva and discuss it with their friends. So you have that type, and of course, always in the middle, Dati Leumi and all people who have these kind of leanings. So that's Baruch Hashem is growing, and because I see that it's a real thing and it's growing, we have embarked. I've been on a monologue. You guys have any questions?
Keep going.
No, keep going.
You're in the flow.
So that's grown now into 3 projects that we're doing, and they're all. I'm going to pitch my projects now, so if anyone wants, they can get in touch with me and pre-order our Siddur. Now, why? So there have been Rambamists in the past, friends of mine, acquaintances who put out Rambam Siddurim. So, for example, this Siddur here is a famous. It's torn, overused. Here's like probably the best Rambam Siddur that's out there right now. You guys know this one?
I have it right here in the back.
So it's put out by Nosach Teman, right? So this is the one we're using. So like, look at mine. It's falling apart because it's been used so much. And I have another one in the Beit Knesset. It's a big hefty siddur. It has a lot of notes. It's really designed for research.
Right.
It's not designed for daily use. Okay, so and then there's also siddurim that are designed for daily use that are similar to this. Besides for Maimonideans always quibble on pronunciation and on nikud and on different niceties and little things. The main issue is this is a siddur that's designed for hermits who pray at home. If you go to Beit Knesset, you have no use of the siddur because it has nothing. It's so far from the nusach that they use in a Sephardic or Ashkenazi shul that
very difficult. It becomes very difficult.
Encourages us Mekoristim, us people who want to pray with a proper nusach, to remain isolated. And that's a very bad thing because isolation isn't good. We want to be out there. We want to live in the rest of Am Yisrael. So my Siddur, it works as follows. It's going to be on a format of an Eidot Mizrach Sephardic Siddur. It's going to have 2 fonts. One font is going to be bold, which is the stuff that we say with footnotes when needed. And then there's going to be the extra stuff that's been added over the generations. It's going to be in a not bold, how do you call that? A lighter font. Like regular smaller font with footnotes explaining when it was added and some of the background, the meaning of it. So a person, and they're going to be divided into, they are already divided into 3 categories. There are things that have been added that we consider absolutely prohibited. For example, l'shem yichud. No one should ever say l'shem yichud because l'shem yichud posits that God's unity is dependent on our actions and it's not an intrinsic inherent unity. So that's addressed. We don't even put it into the Siddur, but we address that as something that you're not allowed to say. Then there are things that you're allowed to say. They're nice. They're not good or bad. They're just added to the Siddur. And in general, like Rambam writes, you're not supposed to add things to the Siddur because you want to keep the service short so people can have kavanah.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that we're, kind of okay with. And then there are some things that have been added that are actually we consider nice and positive and good, but still it's not required, and we delineate between the part that's required and the part that's not. So it'd be easy for Sephardic people. At this point, it's a Sephardic Siddur, but it's close enough, right, to go to Beit Knesset, and we're putting out a really beautiful, aesthetically pleasing Siddur with a nice introduction with explanations and halakhah where we differ, right, which is quite significant.
Is it going to have multiple sizes?
So far I'm starting with like a cheap version that anyone can order, like soft cover short, and then there's going to be a nice one that's like a gift set that's like leather bound with better pages and bookmarks and so on, and the purpose of that, besides for helping the faithful pray properly and also preventing them from becoming complete isolated weirdos. It's also gonna give other people in shul are gonna see that siddur, they're gonna look at it, and we're hoping that it's gonna attract more people to this way of thinking. So that's one of the projects we're doing. Some of our friends, and it's also a group project. We're working on it together, students, and we got rid of the term rabbi. I know you guys called me rabbi. Yes. I was ordained a long time ago. We gave up on the title rabbi. We don't think it can be salvaged at this point. We think people who use that title, rightly or wrongly, have completely misused it, and that's it. We have chaverim and chachamim. Okay, a chaver is anyone, and a chacham is not just a rabbi, someone who teaches. If you study Torah from someone, we call him chacham. Sephardic people are well familiar with that. And that's that. So that's one of our projects.
So when is that going to be published?
So we're already done. I'm just adding a few more footnotes, and I'm also, I'm walking the tightrope. I don't want it to have as much footnotes as our favorite Nosach Teman Rambam Siddur. I can't have that many footnotes, but it has to have some. So I'm trimming down the footnotes that was added by the friends, and it should be ready in the next it should be ready for order. Like, it should be ready for order in the next 3 weeks.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so getting it.
Amazing.
So anyone who wants can reach out to me. Also, if I have people, maybe I'm going to do a thing where you can pre-order, and then that can fund. Is that what people do? I never put out a book before.
You could,
and then that's what pays for the printing.
You know how many you already have, meaning you're already going to get some. You're going to know how many are going to be printed at the very least, and then you can take the extra.
So I got like price quotes for printing 500, printing 1,000. I'm assuming I'll sell 500 Siddurim here in Israel. That's my assumption, just from people in Israel saying, "Oh, when's the Siddur coming out?" I get a lot of emails, so I assume, but I don't know. Like, but the fact that they're asking me when the Siddur is coming out doesn't always mean that they're going to buy it. I've never sold books before, so I don't know yet I never printed before. I don't know how to gauge it. That's one project. We're very excited about that. Because
are you going to try to put it in the stores that sell Sfarim? Are you going to sell Sfarim stores or no?
Yeah.
You're going to put some in there. Okay, great.
I'm gonna try it. If they don't have it, Stemansky will hold it. I don't know. I believe that even in the Haredi bookstores, they're gonna have it, even though you don't think they would. But I remember when the Haredi bookstores were carrying Zionist stuff from Rav Aviner and Rav Sharki, and it was a big deal that you can get it in Mea Sharim. Like, bookstores are bookstores; they're a business. They sell books to people who are interested in religious stuff, and I believe that. And I believe a lot of Haredim are going to be interested in the book. Hopefully, I'm being optimistic about that. And Nispach to the book, and this we're doing it for our Shabbatot, is going to be a Birkat Hamazon and a collection of Zmirot that we've culled to take out Zmirot that we don't want to sing and bring in Zmirot that we do like. And we've also redeemed some old Eretz Yisrael piyutim that no one does. And I have some students who are musicians who are coming up with tunes for it. So we want to kind of, because we want to be a real community. We're done being these online people in WhatsApp groups who only complain about everyone else. Okay. So yes, they're not okay for X, Y, Z reasons, but what is it unique about us? Like, what do we have to bring to the table that has to be brought out? So that's
amazing.
So that's been happening recently.
It's very good that you're coming out with your own tunes, because otherwise you're gonna have like a Mordechai Ish Yemini breakaway shul with the Karl Bach tunes. You can't have that happen.
Yeah. So on our Shabbats, when we have Shabbats, because there's Ashkenazim, Timanim, Sfaradim, and converts, the music is all over the place. We have one Nosach that we pray, but one day it's going to sound Timani, and the other one is going to sound like cantorial Chazanot. So we have to come up with. It's nice because it's diverse, but it's kind of all over the place. So I'm trying to come up with something that would give everyone a bit. I'm not a musical guy. I have people working on that. It's not my expertise. But I noticed that during the singing on Shabbat, when the Ashkenazim do their thing, the Sfaradim are kind of bored, and the Temanim are just like chatting, and when the Temanim take over musically, the Ashkenazim are schmoozing, like, they don't connect musically. Like, it doesn't really meld. Like, people have different tastes. I actually enjoy both because I'm a little bit of both, but I don't know yet how to deal with that. I spoke to the main musical people there, and I said, guys, you need to come up with something that would have all 70 people singing together. So I don't know, but at least we're going to put out a Zmiron, so we have a short Birkat Hamazon and our own Zmiron, and Piyutim and Bakashot and so on. So
very exciting.
That's one project, and and then hopefully that's going to be used by people, and I'm hoping also that's going to affect Sephardic communities. If they have a lot of people using these Siddurim, then they're slowly going to start peeling back layers of things in the Siddur that they don't need, and they're going to improve their own services and shorten them, which is what we want, shorter and better. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that is a book I've been working on years ago, but now I'm finally seeing the end of it, and that's 2 months away, which is my book on the principles. Now, the book on the principles, I've actually circulated in the past. It's in English. I've circulated in the past online versions of it so people can look at it, and many people have helped, improve it. I make the following claim that Maimonides has these famous 13 principles that all Orthodox Jews swear loyalty to, and we teach it to Baal Tshuvas, and we teach it to converts. And some people like Menachem Kellner kind of say, "Oh, principles are not important because Jews aren't supposed to believe in anything. Jews are just supposed to do stuff, and who cares about beliefs?" So I write in my book, I argue against Kellner's take to a certain extent, and I claim that we verbally say we accept these principles, but we violate them in the most profound ways. And by singing Yigdal and by putting out books on the 13, we completely pervert their meaning. And I go through each one of them and show how almost every single one is not being absorbed and it's not being applied. The principles are not just beliefs.
What books are you referring to? What books are you referring to?
Books that were put out?
Yeah.
No, so so there are a couple of books on the principles put out by, let's say, Chabad. It has a long book on the 13 principles.
Nassim Gurari?
I don't remember his name, but I know it's like a Chabad symbol. And I read, of course I bought it because I have every book on the principle. He basically takes every principle and completely switches it around. I can give a few examples. And it's not just Chabad. I don't mean to attack Chabad here. I've attacked them enough. It's everyone. So it's all orthodoxy. So I guess I can why make enemies of like the fastest growing, strongest movement in orthodoxy when I can make enemies of all of the Orthodox. So so basically, like the thing that like Orthodoxy is done. So because Orthodoxy is not defended from Kabbalistic innovation, so the main core concepts of monotheism, how the Rambam and even Ibn Daud or Yehuda Levi or Ibn Ezra, the entire like tradition of Judaism from the Geonim, how they understood God has been changed and has been normalized. So, for example, the very first principle of faith is to believe in God that doesn't need creation, but creation is completely dependent on Him. That's what it means. That's just a definition of the God who we're going to discuss what it means to believe in Him, right? In all Kabbalistic philosophy, let's call it, they believe that we can affect the divine and we change him, and we mentioned L'Shem Yichud, and in fact, you contribute to his unification with his female parts by doing mitzvot. That's what they believe, and we've all accepted it. So that means that when we say we believe in God, it's sort of God as lahavdil ben atameh v'les tameh. It's like when a Christian says, I believe in one God, but I still believe in the Trinity. We've reached that level of cognitive dissonance with, I must say, less impressive apologetics. If you look up Christian apologetics for the Trinity, that are actually more impressive than Jewish apologetics for the for believing in the Shekhinah and the Partzufim and the Sfirot and so on. But that being said, that's like just the belief in God. I hope this isn't too harsh for this channel.
We advocate for this all the time in our podcast.
And secondly, just unity. The second principle is unity principle, right? And I think I've discussed this with you in the past, right? Yeah. You can say you believe in God and one God who's an absolute unity and believe in we're all a piece of God. But besides for that, even things that you would think are, we all accept. Like, for example, one of the principles is the supremacy of the Mosaic prophecy. Okay, it's the seventh principle. It's the longest principle. It brings a lot of examples, and it's obvious because during Islam that was much needed because Muslims were converting Jews by saying that, we have a new prophecy. So Mosaic prophecy is supreme.
Wasn't it that they said that there was corruption in the original?
So they had multiple arguments. One, there was corruption, and the other was that Moses was a prophet. He was a good prophet, of course, Nabi Musa, but we have a new prophet who kind of supersedes, a supersessionist.
But then what do they do with Velo Kam Naviot?
Oh, then that was the part that we've
Corruption.
forged.
That's the corruption part.
That's the
Okay,
corruption.
I gotcha. Okay.
So that and other things, anything that we use from the Torah to reject them, that's corrupted. So this way they can use our legacy, our history, and the fact that most of the world believed in our prophecies, and they can use it as part of theirs and still reject the parts they don't want. So the supremacy of Mosaic prophecy, what it really means, though, is that you're not allowed to say, you're not supposed to say things or believe things that every generation has a Moshe Rabbeinu. No, every generation does not have a Moshe Rabbeinu. There was one Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So when you say there's a Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation, what you're saying is that we have a figure who has the spiritual level and sometimes the halachic level of Moshe Rabbeinu, and everything he says goes. That's anti the principles of
Equating
Judaism.
the authority of Moshe to the Gadol.
Yeah, to any rabbi,
Yep.
any rabbi, and Mashiach, and so all the things I go through all of that, and basically make the case that we need to reevaluate what he. Let's just read the simple words. It's not. I'm not a big philosopher. Just reevaluate what he meant in these principles, how he understood it, how people in his time understood it, and how we understand it today. And I draw a distinction, the comparison between it's really remarkable how a figure like Shabbetai Tzvi, who every Orthodox person will probably say Shabbetai Tzvi, Machshamo v'Shem Zichro. They've completely crucified the figure of Shabbetai Tzvi for being a false messiah and for converting to Islam, while and all of his books are completely pasul. You can't get his books anywhere. But besides for me, I have not his books, but books of Sabbatian Kabbalists. But if what I've realized is that the main ideas of Sabbatianism have actually been absorbed not by some crazy Kabbalists, not by some niche weirdos, fringe weirdos. No, main ideas of Sabbatianism have been absorbed by most Jews today. Not most, many Jews. Like the fastest growing movement in Judaism are basically Sabbatian ideas, and we'll discuss which ideas I'm talking about in a moment. And it's crazy how we don't even realize that. It's like on the one hand, we've sainted Rambam to be this saintly figure who everyone quotes and everyone has pictures of him, and everyone reads his books without understanding what he's saying, while rejecting his faith and his legal approach. And then we've buried and crucified Shabbetai Tzvi while absorbing the ideas that he was known for. It's insane, and that's what the book comes to argue. We should, first of all, we don't have to hate Shabbetai Tzvi as a man. He made mistakes, but he was not that different than your average Orthodox guy today. That's an argument I make, but that's not the main point of the book. The fact that he converted to Islam was because he would have died if he wouldn't have. And according to halakhah, guess what? If Muslims maybe are enemies, but they're monotheists, and you should convert to Islam and not die, and then later come back. It's not like Christianity, which was considered not monotheistic. That wasn't the problem with Shabbetai Tzvi. The problem with Shabbetai Tzvi was that he was a Kabbalist, and he applied Zohar and Arizal maybe a bit creatively, but he actually did what they said needs to be done.
He took it to its conclusion.
Yeah, he took it to its reasonable conclusion, and he was the Mashiach according to their interpretation of what the Messiah is, and even according to our Orthodox interpretation of the Messiah. If starting a Teshuvah movement that brings people back to Judaism, inspires them, and reveals to them the secrets of the Torah as defined by the Kabbalistic works of the Zohar and the Ari, no one did that better than Shabbetai Tzvi. He put Rabbi Schneerson of, some might say, blessed memory, into shame in how much tshuva he did. There were like second generation conversos coming back to Judaism because of Shabbetai Tzvi, and then like if Rabbi Schneerson has any claim to the messianic title because he revealed Torah and the tshuva and so on, Shabbetai Tzvi had it more. And the fact that he ended up not being the Messiah doesn't make him a false Messiah. According to
he was breaking halakhah, and he was changing making up holidays and doing all that kind of stuff. But
married a Sefer Torah.
He was obviously a bipolar lunatic.
I addressed that partially. I went through the latest research in Shabbetai Tzvi. I highly doubt that he was breaking halakhah. A lot of this breaking halakhah stuff are things said by his posthumous enemies to make him look bad. He was extremely halachic. In fact, some might even say Maimonidean, similar to Chabad today. He went through Ilchot Mashiach and tried to prove that he's the same thing as in Rambam. It's much more nuanced than people think it is.
Very interesting.
One of my favorite, maybe my favorite book of Jewish history is Gershom Scholem's Shabbetai Tzvi, the Mystical Messiah. It's a masterpiece.
That's why I started this path.
Yeah.
of Yerushalayim. But since then, more has been discovered, and it turns out that a lot of the stuff about him breaking halakhah, it's actually been there's a few good books about it that came out recently. One of them I have here. Maybe you even want to have him on your channel once. He's actually unironically pro Shabbetai Tzvi. His name is Holzer. And he put out a few books. One of them is like Maya Shabtaut, what exactly was Shabbetai Tzvi and what he meant, and then he includes some Kabbalistic work of some of Sabbatian stuff, and then he even put out Sefer HaBriah by Nathan of Gaza, okay, which I got as well.
Interesting.
And anyway, the reason I'm getting this is that I'm getting a more updated picture of who this figure was. He was an Orthodox Kabbalist who, according to the internal rules of Kabbalistic Messianism, he should have had that title. There was no reason for him not. It wasn't a crazy thing to say, which is why more than 90%, maybe some would say more than 95% of Orthodox people, including rabbis, accepted Shabbetai Tzvi's claims until they turned out.
That does make sense. But
The impression,
if it was really
Yeah.
okay, I'm just saying it makes sense that. Look, I don't know the history at all, so I have no like nothing to say of any nothing. But why would 95% people accept him if he really was constantly breaking halakhah?
I think Sholom's point in the book, because obviously Sholom is he appreciates Kabbalah, at least Zohar Kabbalah and so on. But
Yeah, he defends it.
his issue was with Lurianic Kabbalah and how it kind of like hijacked everything that came before and just became its own thing and dominated. And then this idea of tikkunim and rabbis being knowing your previous tikkun, and it led to like this whole like Lurianic movement kind of like naturally just developed into this, and then it continued even after with the Hasidic movement. Actually, he pointed out there was a book called Sefer HaZoref, I believe so. That was the book. Yeah, that it apparently was by a Sabbatean, and it was one of the books that the Baal Shem Tov that influenced him at a young age, and he supposedly was unaware that it was a Sabbatean book. So like this, this kind of stuff it was everywhere, and even generations later, people were trying to find any influence of Sabbateanism in other works. So we've actually did a podcast on this in the past with Professor Matt Goldish. If anyone wants to go back, yeah. So anyway,
so the argument so one of the things I'm saying is that we have ideas that we take for granted today among all of our yeshivot that really are the people who develop these ideas are Shabbetai Tzvi circles. So one of them is the idea of a tzaddik. So the idea of a tzaddik, we've had the idea of a tzaddik in the Gemara, righteous people we can use as an example to learn from. But we've never had people who are this hitkashrut, they call it iskashrus, right? That he's your connection to God. You connect to God through the tzaddik. This is an idea that's very prominent in Chabad and in Breslov.
A divine figure.
Some might not be as bold as to call it a divine figure. They say he's an intermediary, which may be even worse because that's again violates some of the most important principles of monotheism. So some Sufis are getting murdered by Sunnis for being heretics, for believing in the same idea, because they believe that the sheikh is an intermediary, and like they think when you pray you should think of the sheikh, right? Some orders of Sufis believe in that, and we in Hasidus and we have similar ideas where you basically you have to think of the tzaddik when you pray, and it's very common in the Hasidic world. So that's an idea.
Or during intimacy, some groups.
Or they'll put a picture of this or that rabbi in front of the candles, and the woman's supposed to meditate on his face when she lights the magic Shabbat candles, right? So the idea of thinking of during intimacy is also interesting because it's like it harkens to this tribal thing of the head of the tribe having all the kids, like having all the women. So we don't do that, but if she thinks of him during intimacy, it's kind of like, so it's basically her kids are kind of going to be his kids, right? It's it all goes back to ancient idolatrous practices. So here's an idea that the same people, and rather the same people who believe in the tzaddik will immediately tell you they believe in the 13 principles, which obviously they don't, right? But what they don't realize is they're applying Sabbateanism while destroying Maimonideanism. And then that's one idea. Another, in the book I go through some of them, but another common one is, it's very common in Israel. And over here again, I'm going to lose a lot of followers for this, but who cares? This idea of Knesset Israel. Okay, so the word Knesset Israel shows up in the Midrash, and it always meant like this collective being person of the Jewish people. So there's a dialogue between the Jewish nation and God. Knesset Yisrael is the Jewish people, and there's a lot of poetic, literary things in the Midrash that's nice about that. But what Shabbetai, the Zohar, and Shabbetai Tzvi's circle did even more than that. They developed the following magical idea, which I was a proponent of for many, many years until I woke up, which is that Knesset Yisrael is the collective soul of the nation, and it's the keter of the sphira, so of the sphirot. It's basically the connection between heaven and earth. So God's connection to the world is through the soul of the Jewish nation, and that means that the Jewish nation's soul has divinity to it, and the results of that, and that's what Knesset Israel is to them. It's a very Sabbatian concept, and that also means that that's how they explain like how whatever the Jewish nation does has to be right. So that's why when I have arguments with, and who's one of the biggest proponents of Knesset Israel as a working theme in applied Jewish theology?
Rav Kook?
Yes. Sorry, guys. I know I'm a graduate of Merkaz Rav, but I spent years like thinking about Knesset Israel, meditating on it and discussing it. And what it meant, and I realized that what it actually means practically is that anyone who, first of all, anyone who has any conflict with Israel is God's enemy, right? So in Tanakh, for example, you'll realize that God is ambivalent to the Jewish nation when we don't follow the covenant. So he can kind of like even be on, Nebuchadnezzar's side if we deserve destruction and punishment. So the God of the Tanakh is harsh to us when we don't behave and benevolent when we do. Yes, we always have a covenant. We can always come back. But the concept of Knesset Israel flips that and says the Jews can do no wrong. And Jewish interests are God's interests. And it's non-dependent on Jewish morality, ethics, or relationship to God. So a completely secular state whose religious establishment is overtaken by pagans has divine right to do anything they want. And then you'll find like whenever this, I know it's sometimes blown out of proportion, but whenever there's some sort of hooliganism and thuggery in the hilltops around me, right? And we're doing anything, the Knesset Israel people will see that as an expression of Jews exercising their divine right. And then they'll say things like that you need to basically worship the Jewish nation, okay? And it affects their theology, it affects halakhah too. That's why I can't have a halakhic conversation with them, because if you show them that they're doing something against Talmudic law, they will say, yeah, but the Jewish nation, they actually said this to me in debates that I've done in Hebrew with rabbis, the Jewish nation decided that we don't wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed. So yes, maybe according to the Talmud, tefillin needs to be worn on Chol HaMoed, as an example, but there's a power, legal, halachic, divine power to the collective decision of the Jews. So since all the Jews decided that we don't wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed, even though the Kabbalistic reasons are not halachically binding, they would accept that you have to separate halakha and Kabbalah, but they believe that there's a common law aspect that comes from this idea of the Jewish nation's divinity. And Rav Kook his halakha is very much affected by that in his halachic works and his theology as well. This is an idea that is driving policy in Israel's government today. All right. And it's not driving policy in a good direction. It's driving us in a direction that's actually causing us damage. So it's real world consequences to violating our covenant with God and not being loyal to monotheistic principles. I mentioned that in my book as well. It doesn't bring me a lot of friends, not in where I live and not anywhere, but I think it's the truth that needs to be said. So that book is about how maybe I should call the book Why We're All Sabbatians and Why We Shouldn't Be, something like that. But like we are all Shabbetai Tzvi and how that can change. Maybe it should be a different book where I expand on that stuff. But regardless, that's my second book that I'm doing, and I'm very excited about that.
I'll
It's in
just
English.
say the reality is that my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I do have I do think that, again, I don't know the historical connections, and I'm not going to speak for that, but most of the things that you're discussing is really something that has grown via mainly Hasidut. So what I'm saying is that these concepts that you're bringing out, Knesset Israel, Tzaddik, this, that, they were not
Actualized.
they were not really, they weren't popularized so much before Hasidut came onto the scene. And Hasidut came onto the scene, and I always felt like this, that even the literature world today, even the, just the regular Sfaradi or whatever it is, they've kind of culturally borrowed
Yeah,
these
it's
Hasidic
template,
concepts into their consciousness, and it's become very, very normal to think in these lines. I don't think that this was I don't think that this was as common before Hasidut exploded onto the scene.
So I used to agree completely with what you just said, but now I've come around to realize that the situation is much more dire. Okay, and I'll tell you why. So I used to think like you think, that Lithuanians were skeptical about mysticism. They're kind of like reasonable and rational. Hasidim were the mystics, and superficially that seems to be true. But if you read Nefesh HaChaim, right, which is the main theological work of Lithuanians,
I know where you're going.
besides for a lot of mysticism going on, I want to talk to you about one prime concept that exists in Nefesh HaChaim and in Lithuanian yeshivas, in the Sephardic yeshivas, and even in maybe some modern Orthodox yeshivot, that threatens to destroy our country. It's a false, idolatrous, I would say, superstitious idea. I'm not going to call it idolatrous at this point because it isn't, but it is superstitious and it is wrong, that is actually destroying the country as we speak. And that's this idea that Hasidim did nothing to contribute to this idea. This exists completely independent of the Hasidim. And it's the idea that what learning Torah is and what learning Torah does. According to Lithuanian theology, which is shared by Hasidim as well, but this is something that Lithuanians have without any Hasidic input, by learning Torah, you save the world, right? Torah megina u'matzila. Now, there's a level where I accept that. But let's understand what it means to them. What is the Torah that's Megina and Matzila? What is this Torah that actually, saves and defends the Jews, the Jewish nation, the world? So anyone who learned in yeshiva knows it's a very specific form, and it's exclusively that. Okay, it's not Tanakh, it's not halakhah, it's not even Talmudic research. It's we call pilpul, but it's a kind of theoretical learning of it's a certain type of Talmudic study which is guaranteed to have zero practical application, and they're proud of that. It's not alibadi hilchata. Like alibadi hilchata is for stupid people, it's for Sfaradim, it's not for us elites. They learn Gemara, but the real Gemara is Reb Chaim, the real Gemara is the Shagas Aryeh, right? The real Gemara is understanding these and never-ending circular logic of Talmudic theory. Now, that is the Torah that they all engage in their yeshivot today, and that is the Torah that defends us. Now, in order just to crystallize like how this is a Kabbalistic idea and how terrible it is, right? In order to defend this, they're willing to tear this country apart, right? None of them are going to go to the army. They will unironically claim that this is what actually defends the country, while and I made a video about it. So I don't know if you saw, but just to show how intellectually and morally bankrupt these ideas are. If you notice, do you know like of the Panovich controversy?
No.
So there's been a controversy on Panovich between two different factions. We're not going to get into the details, but who gets to control this institution and its funding, okay, and the brand. That's been going on for 40 years, and I'm not going to attack a big institution for having this kind of conflict. There was stuff like that in the Yeshivot Geonim. So far, that doesn't make them terrible. Yes, it goes against, if people didn't take money for Torah and they were all Rambamists, they wouldn't have that, but we don't live in a perfect world. So, however, in the last few years, something very interesting happened. They could not find one Beit Din that they trusted to adjudicate their case. Who did they go to? They went to Shofet Bet Mishpat Elyon Cheshin, who's a secular Supreme Court judge, who they always talk about how much they're Rishayim and how much they hate them, but they asked him to adjudicate their case. And the first rule in Fight Club of Judaism, the first rule in Choshen Mishpat is that you don't go to Erkaot. If you have Jewish law, you're not supposed to go to secular court. They went to the worst type of secular court, which is Bet Mishpat Elyon of Israel, who they spend their whole lives attacking, including today, because they couldn't find one Beit Din they trust. The depth of moral bankruptcy that reveals is astounding, because most of what Panovich has done for the last 70 years is learn Nizikin. Nizikin is literally the laws of damages, tort law.
Civil
This
law.
is their. If they couldn't produce one Beit Din that that could internally solve their financial dispute, ad kedei kach, that they had to go to erkaot of the secular authorities and have them adjudicate, that shows two things. It shows that everything they learned has zero value and it's complete bitul Torah, and it shows another thing. It also shows how little faith they have in their own Torah. The same Torah that's supposed to defend the nation from missiles and rockets and genocidal enemies is not good. How come they didn't have enough faith to believe that the right thing will happen if they had a conversation about who takes over the yeshiva? Who runs the funding of their institution? Prayer isn't enough, and faith isn't enough, and even following halakhah isn't enough. We're allowed to violate halakhah. We're not going to rely on God, on prayer, on miracles and an intervention. But to defend the entire country, yes, the Torah works. There's something over there that doesn't work. It shows how they don't believe in the things they say. And the reason I mentioned this is that they didn't need any help from Hasidim to have this idea, and that actually is doing, in many ways, more damage, at least in this temporal world. And the idea of the tzaddik, people go to Ummah, it's gross, but people who believe that this magical act of badly impersonating Chazal, like the learning, I just want to attack the Lithuanians one more time in case you think that we're giving them a pass. Okay, it's like the Talmud that they're learning, right, has nothing to do with the Talmud of Chazal. You realize that it's LARPing and cosplaying, because the Talmud of Chazal was a practical attempt to apply Tanaitic sources to their changing world in Bavel. They were legislating. It was a creative action. They were not doing pilpul, and they weren't mimicking and LARPing as Tanaim. They were actually continuing that tradition for real practical purposes.
They were judicially driven.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. What I did in yeshiva had nothing to do with that. My only study of Torah began when I realized that everything I did in yeshiva was sheker. That's when I actually began to look at the same Talmud that I learned in yeshiva, let's say the Bavot, the Nizikin, and I started thinking of it in legal terms and legal perspectives. These ideas that I got from Chacham Fa'or. That's when I started when I could actually make Birkat Torah. Before that, I don't know if what they're doing can be Birkat Torah. It definitely doesn't defend the country, and they didn't need help from any outside mystics to do that. They've developed their own mystical doctrine to prove this ridiculous idea. Now, I'll just steelman them for a moment and say that if you're in exile, you live in a ghetto, you don't have ability to apply much judicial authority, and you don't have ability to make any change in the world because you're a nation in exile and you have no independence, then it kind of makes sense why you would develop ideas such as this in order to keep the tradition of the Talmud alive and the skill of the Talmud alive. I could steelman that argument, but today, in our generation, 2026, Lemin Yanam, there's no reason to continue with that. We should completely reject those ideas, and therefore I don't give the Lithuanians a pass at all. I consider them in some cases worse than the Hasidim, who at least they're friendly and they're warm and they have communal cohesion and they're like just maybe a little less mean than Lithuanians can be. But I don't consider one necessarily much better than the other. They each have strengths and purposes. What unites them all is the need to repent.
I would say I would ask one. I would not push back, but I would
push back. Please,
No.
morning,
It's not, but it's
I'm
not a
combative
pushback.
today.
You're correct, but I'm wondering, was the Lithuanian, for lack of a better term, philosophy of Talmud, pilpul, let's call it. I shouldn't call it a philosophy. I'm saying, but this idea of pilpul and everything behind it, was it that the Zohar not the Zohar, but let's call it like whatever Kabbalistical principles in place caused this idea, or is it really that pilpul went much further beforehand and Kabbalah kind of gave it a new spin or a new type of way of looking at it to further it and kind of maybe
Justify it.
Yes, and to give it more wings, like let's call it, because the Hasidic ideas are really born from Kabbalah. You understand what I mean? Like they're you get what I'm saying. Where I'm wondering.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, you get what I'm saying.
So should this? I can't give you. I don't have an answer that I'm convinced of as to the exact historic genesis of the pilpul movement. Let's call it as we have it today.
You see it in doses like Tosafot, like it's like starting to be mipalpel different stirot. But again, as a system of learning, I don't know when it
As a
started.
system of learning, it's a very modern thing, and I must add that even within the Lithuanian world, there's been attacks against this idea, including by people who they consider giants and who I have respect for, like the Chazon Ish, who wrote against Pilpul study, and his work was censored. So the reason I believe that I can't say the reason that why this movement won out over the other. There's different theories that all make sense, but I think that basically when the Hasidic movement started, the Lithuanians rejected it, and they call them misnagdim, right? They went against it. Their hitnagdut could have been the stuff we talk about today: pure monotheism, practical law, ethical, reasonable Talmud approach. It could have been that. They responded with Gaon of what they consider I don't even know if the Gaon of Vilna wrote that, but like Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna's commentary on the Zohar, which actually in many ways is worse than the Baal HaTanya. Like more like he believed in the Sfirot as actual beings and not Mishalim.
Right.
Like if you get into the weeds of it, like it wasn't a great response from our perspective of like, believing in God. And also the Nefesh HaChaim response, it could have been something else. They could have presented a form of Judaism that rejected all these ideas, but they chose to absorb them and explain them differently. And I'm not sure that it's much better. Now, to what extent Pilpul was affected by that, I don't know. I don't even know if it was affected by that. Pilpul can stand on its own without mysticism. It's
Right.
not the Pilpul that I'm complaining about right now, even though it's worthy of complaining about. I'm concerned about the fact, because look, Israel is a diverse country. We have Jews, we have Christians. It's okay that we have Haredim. I'm not saying Haredim have to if I can be tolerant to citizens of other religions, I'm definitely can be tolerant to Haredim, even though we compete over souls, right? But if we have a religious minority in this country that controls how people understand God and the Torah, and that understanding means that this absolute bitul Torah, embarrassment to the original Talmud, is considered the Torah, and people think, oh, we have yeshiva guys that are learning. There's more Torah today in Israel than there ever was in the world. That's absolutely not true. The Torah is dying, my friends. If we don't study Torah, no one is, because what they're doing in yeshivot, it's LARPing. It's like going to. It reminds me of when I was in the States. I used to go to these medieval, what do you call them? Reenactments.
Oh, medieval
right?
times and all this.
Yeah, like what do they call them?
Jousting, all that.
Yeah, and you go and you can buy like a sword, and you could ride a horse and like and shoot and do some archery. Like that's what they're doing. They're not continuing the tradition of Chachamim. We're continuing the tradition of Chachamim, and I'm just gonna finish by saying that with my Haredi students who are in yeshivot, I used to tell them leave yeshiva and go to the army and so on. I still say that to some of them, and I have a few of them in Chashmonaim, but now I don't always say that. I feel like there's enough of them in yeshivot that they can affect change. And maybe some yeshivot will create a voice and at least start a revolution that will be recorded in history. That there was some people in Hebron and in Kol Torah and all these places that knew that the king is naked.
Amazing.
I love you.
Really amazing. Never a dull moment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so those are therefore I reject the defense of the Lithuanians. I do think there's potential in all of them. Oh, another thing, I've come to the realization that we should never become, I hope we never become as being recorded for posterity, but I hope we never become we call it in Hebrew a migzar. How do you say migzar? A denomination.
Oh, okay.
I want us to always remain I call it in Hebrew a toda'ah. It's awareness. It's a type of awareness. It's an understanding, and I think that the principles we teach on my channel Shevei Luchot, for everyone who doesn't know, these are principles that can be applied in almost every single denomination, besides for a few which we'll discuss, and it could be just with minor adjustments. So a person who grew up Haredi and he's comfortable in that world, and those are his friends, and that's his family. He doesn't need to put on this kippah or another kippah. I don't owe anything to the Dati Leumi community. They don't have to be Dati Leumi. There are enough Haredim in the army where if it's right for him to go to the army, he can still go to the army and wear a black kippah, and he can still go to a Haredi shul and use our Siddur, and he can still look Haredi and be part of that as a social grouping, right? Similarly, a Lithuanian. You could be in a Lithuanian yeshiva, and you can actually go to shiur in your yeshiva. If you're a yeshiva guy and you're listening to me right now, I'm not telling you to leave Chaim Berlin or Mir tomorrow. It may be a good idea in your personal case, but you know what? If you're learning Kiddushin right now, I can give you tools, and not just me, there are other people out there. We can give you tools where your study of Kiddushin will actually become Limud Torah Lishma, and you could make a bracha, Birkat HaTorah in the morning, and it wouldn't be bracha levatala, and you'd be learning a little different. Then you'd be considered a weirdo by some of your friends, but I promise you, other people would join you because what you have is so reasonable and normal. You can learn Gemara normally, like a normal person, not like a psycho, right? So you could be in a Lithuanian yeshiva, you can wear that felt hat even, okay? And you can still be a normal guy, and you can be connected to the sources. And I found crazy stuff. Even certain, like, I have guys who are Vishnitz Hasidim. They're completely in on what we're doing, but they live in Vishnitz. Their grandfather's from Vishnitz. They pray with a Rambam Siddur. But I'm not telling them they have to leave their whole family, like Avraham Avinu, I don't have an alternative denomination for them, and I don't want to have one, okay? Most intelligent people in Vishnitz know that the rabbi is not all he's cracked up to be, and they know that he could benefit from reading a few books, right? But that's the community that they live in, and that's the food that they like. Those are the tunes they connect to. So it's fine. The only communities I have a hard time saying you can remain part of are Breslov and Chabad, right? Yeah. But even Chabad, I believe, you could be culturally Chabad, and you can still be religiously a Jew. I know it's hard to believe, but it's possible. And that's basically my last point I wanted to make. And I'm trying to keep my guys from not having their own style of kippah, their own style. We have a cool talitot that are black, and like we prostrate when we pray. We have prayer mats, but it shouldn't be something that you can recognize from the outside. I want us to be like a tumor, a positive tumor in every denomination. We should be everywhere. And we shouldn't be recognized by anything outward. We should be recognized by how we behave, how we sound, ethics, and wisdom. Torah and mitzvah. That's it. That should be our calling card. And that's it. That's on a positive note. I'll let you guys ask questions.
That's beautiful message at the end. I really love that. Definitely the idea of not becoming denominational and just, it's just like a very Sephardi kind of message, like that's what it's all about. We shouldn't have a distinct look. We should all sit together no matter what our personal beliefs are, our own style. There's a lot of individualism, which I think you're bringing a lot to the table in this area. So we really appreciate that.
There's a third project that you're working on.
Yes. So I don't know how much time we have. We can get into the third part. So recently, because I've been teaching and I've been doing this channel, some old Yemenites reached out to me. This is just a few weeks old, okay? And they said, we watch your channel. It's really nice. You teach stuff that's been in our hearts for years. Just for background, these are Yemenites who have been part of this Yemenite Rambamist community for years. They call them Dati Leumi in Israel. And in the past, they kind of been like conversos. They've been very quiet about their beliefs. So outside they could look like a Dati Leumi or a Haredi guy, but inside they have very similar to beliefs like we have of like rejecting the Kabbalistic innovations. And so some of them reached out to me and said, we really like what you're doing. Would you like to teach in our synagogue in Modi'in? Now, this for me, these are people who I've been fangirling over them for the last decade. Like I've been reading their works, and I've been very interested in their how they study Talmud and how they understand Torah and Judaism and the principles. Even though I'm not Yemenite in any way, I have a lot of ideological affinity with these people, and I really see them as examples, and they're people in their 80s and 70s. They're not children. So, and I felt like I'm not worthy of teaching them a class, but I said, all right, guys, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm willing to do a class in none other than Milhamot Hashem, the book by Rav Yechia Qafih against the Zohar, Ari, and Sabbatian Kabbalah. And we'll do it together. I'm not an expert, even though I've read it a few times. You guys have original manuscripts. You guys have traditions of how this is read. We're going to read it together. You'll correct me if I make a mistake. And we're going to use this class as a basis for the reprinting of Milhamot Hashem with expanded footnotes and explanatory notes, because if you read Milhamot Hashem without background in Talmud or in Kabbalah, it can be a bit esoteric. So I want to give the idea, like he just mentions Kabbalistic ideas that he expects you to understand. He doesn't even bother translating them.
You're doing the groundwork. So you're giving the groundwork.
Yeah, I'm explaining what exactly he's trying to achieve, because
Right.
it's a book that's been talked about much. Me in yeshiva, I remember I read 2 books attacking him, 2 books debunking Milhamot Hashem before I even got a copy of Milhamot Hashem. So I want to put out Milhamot Hashem again, and I want to put it out with like in a Haredi, like religious, like yeshivish looking book, and with expanded footnotes. And I told them, listen, guys, we'll do this class, guys. We'll do this class. It's online. I put it up on I put it up the class on my channel. And as soon as I finished my first class, I got dozens of calls from people all over Israel in their 60s to their 90s, thanking me for the class and offering me advice, which I've written down and I'm still recording. And I don't know when this project is going to end, but I'm beginning, before I finish the Siddur and the principles, I'm beginning to prepare the original manuscript, which also you have in the Israel library. You have a manuscript of Milhamot Hashem, but there are also explanatory notes and stuff that was added on later and additional material that was developed. So I'm working on that as well. And what's cool about the class was that I came with a posse of my students, young people from all over Israel, some dressed like Avrechim, and some in uniform, and some college students. So a small Temani shul that usually has like 5 or 6 old people studying Talmud together. Now there's 20 young people with them. I don't know, 20, 15 people with them. The class was 20 altogether. And it was just it like just like Yaakov Avinu v'tchi ruach Yaakov. It was so energized by it. But for me, the great zechut is the ability to reprint this great book that I've been thinking about and reading for the last 2 decades.
So important. And just out of curiosity, like I'm very fascinated by the Dor Daim as well. How many like members do they have? How big is the community?
So it's not like Hell's Angels, where you pay a membership fee and they know how many members there are. I don't know if Hell's Angels is a good example, but it's not like a gym where everyone has, you can look at computer. But it's also not necessarily an ideological group anymore. You have people who their grandparents were Dardaim, so they have a different Siddur, but they can have a picture of the Baba Sali and Qafih in their living room. It's not clear how many people have those beliefs. I've come across several hundred of them, but there's also some gray area. So you have people who, not everyone is ideologically driven, and not everyone is ideologically consistent. So you have people who think Rav Yechiel Kapach was the greatest guy, but they also learn in Merkaz Rav and learn Rav Kook, and they don't understand the fundamental contradictions, which is okay. I also didn't understand them for a while. There was a time, and I also thought I can be kind of both. So the answer to your question is, and by our next interview, there's going to be hundreds of thousands, but for now, there are probably a few thousand. Probably a few thousand now, and then probably another few thousand that are tangentially connected. So Dardaim who believe in the ideology of Rav Yechiel Kapach, I think a good few thousand.
Maybe I'm misremembering this, but didn't like Rav Ovadia Yosef say that they have the status of like a Tinok Shenishba or something like that? Or is that incorrect?
It was in his
It's not incorrect. No? It's in one of his. I thought I saw it in Yabia Omer.
Yeah, it was in Yabia Omer.
I couldn't find it in the latest editions of Yabia Omer. I'm assuming they took it out, but I saw it in another collection of tshuvot that one of his students put out, and he said something interesting. The question was, can you eat shechita that was done by Dardaim, and could they be accepted from Inyan? There were Gedolim that said no. Rav Ovadia said absolutely. And the reason that's okay, first of all, Sephardic Jews, even Hakham Mordehai, are always going to be more reasonable than those who are not, okay, in these kind of things. But Hakham Mordehai said, his response was interesting because he said, yes, they're wrong for going against what most of the nation does, but they have some reasonable questions about the Kabbalah that have not been fully addressed. He did mention that in his tshuva. So, and I remember another anecdote about Hakham Mordehai. One of his sons, Yitzhak Yosef, has a video that you can see on YouTube attacking the Dardaim and rejecting his father's tshuva, and says they can't be in Minyan. But he also says something interesting. He says that his father always had a copy of Milhamot Hashem, and he used to read it. And he said, I used to ask my father, why are you reading this book by these Dardaim? He said, should know what to respond to the Apikoros. And I wonder, who's the Apikoros that he's talking about? Okay. I wonder, because at the end of the day, he went on this campaign to demysticize halakhah. there's no way a man like that didn't have his doubts. And why does he keep going back to Milhamot Hashem? I mean, I also keep going back to it. I can't blame him. It's a great book. But is Damash Tashiv Karas the Kabbalists or the anti-Kabbalists? I leave that for the listener to wonder, as do I. But yeah, so according to Hakham Mordehai, we are kasher for minyan. I think that your average shasnik is kasher for minyan as well. I have my doubts if certain types of chassidim are kasherim leminyan, but you know, I don't practice that way. Halakhah ve'en morin ken. I feel like the sanctions, like if I like actually, so speaking of Rav Kapach says that, you know, a Kabbalist wine is yain nesech, his shchita is nevela, and he's not kasher for minyan. I don't practice that, not just for pragmatic reasons. I think the sanctions of being posel someone from minyan and considering their shchita, it's within the context where they're minim. That you can technically call Kabbalist minim. People love doing that today. But the truth is, minut works in a world where you have a standard of faith where everyone believes in God, and you have a small sectarian group that becomes minim. But if minut has infected everything, and we have this cancer that we're trying to get rid of, it's not reasonable to now not go to any minyan. We're not doing that. Okay, we're going to assume that when people say L'Shem Yichud, they don't mean that God actually has a male and female part. They're just reading the words. The reason we want to get rid of it is because the words are idolatrous, but we're going to assume, judge them l'kav zchut, that they don't mean that. And when we believe that when a Lubavitcher thinks that, you know, he could pray to the Rebbe, he doesn't think the Rebbe's God. He just was taught false things and in a false way, and he's fully capable of repenting, and he has to be given an alternative before you can just consider him a Gentile. So I don't accept any of those practical applications of minut to anti-Maimonideans, at least not yet.
Well said.
Fair enough.
Wow. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And we when your books come out, please send it our way. We want to
put a link to my channel.
So,
and then
by the way, there's your channel.
My email is there. My email is there. Anyone who wants to reach out to me, I answer emails, not on time. It could be slow, but I always answer. I respond, and if anyone wants help or anything. I might be coming to the States in August.
Really?
For a wedding of my niece
in New York.
Oh, Mazal.
In New York, yeah.
Brooklyn.
So Brooklyn. Where else am I going to go? Brooklyn, Aleppo, Brooklyn. Yeah, and
we have to meet up. We have to.
Yeah, maybe we'll do an inline studio thing.
That'd be cool.
Fun.
Oh, maybe we'll get
anyone who wants to reach out to me regarding that or regarding any of these projects, let me know.
That would be amazing. Keep in touch. I wanna keep in touch when you're also in the States. And Hakham Mordehai, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And
it's always a pleasure. It's so much fun hanging out. I don't even know we're recording. When we're talking, it's like friends having conversations.
You have an incredible energy and spirit. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
Keep doing good things. And I'm excited for these books.
Very excited.
Thank you. Chazak u'baruch. Hashem imachem.